You wake up every morning and go through the motions, don't you? You tell yourself you're fine, that this feeling of drifting is temporary, that somehow tomorrow will be different. But deep down, in those quiet moments before sleep, you know the truth. You're tired of feeling like a stranger in your own life. You're exhausted from pretending that this fog of uncertainty doesn't follow you everywhere you go. I see you nodding because I've been there. That gnawing sensation that everyone else has figured something out that you're missing. That invisible weight pressing down on your chest when you realize another day has passed and you still don't know where you're heading or who you're becoming. But what if I told you that feeling lost isn't your permanent address? What if those 14 days ahead of you could become the bridge between the person who feels adrift and the person who walks with unshakable purpose? Not through some magical transformation or empty promises, but through a deliberate reconstruction of how you meet each day. This isn't about adding more to your already overwhelming life. This is about becoming someone who no longer recognizes the person who felt so disconnected just 2 weeks ago. Someone who looks in the mirror and sees clarity where confusion once lived. Someone who moves through the world with intention instead of hoping for direction to find them. The next 14 days will either pass by like all the others, leaving you exactly where you are now, or they will mark the beginning of the most important relationship you'll ever develop. The relationship with the person you're about to become. I'm going to show you exactly how to build that person, one deliberate day at a time. But first, if you're ready to stop drifting and start becoming, subscribe to this channel. Because what I'm about to share will only work if you're committed to showing up for yourself in ways you never have before. Number 1, understanding the feeling of being lost. You didn't arrive at this moment by accident. That hollow feeling gnawing at your chest, that sense of wandering through life without direction, didn't just happen to you like bad weather. You are lost because you have been drifting. And drifting is not a passive state. It is an active choice, made one small surrender at a time. Every morning you wake up and wait for something to happen to you instead of happening to the world. You check your phone for direction instead of consulting your own compass. You ask others what they think you should do instead of listening to the voice that knows. Day after day, you hand over the steering wheel of your mind to circumstances, to other people's opinions, to the endless noise of a world that profits from your confusion. This is what I call drifting. It is the absence of purpose made manifest in daily life. It is living without initiative, reacting instead of creating, following instead of leading. The drifter becomes a leaf in the wind, beautiful perhaps, but powerless to determine where it lands. But here is what most people will never tell you. The mind operates according to definite laws, as precise and unwavering as the law of gravity. When you understand these laws and align yourself with them, you stop drifting and start directing. You transform from a passenger in your own life to the architect of your destiny. Picture 2 ships leaving the same harbor on the same day. One has a destination, a captain who knows the stars, and a crew trained to navigate storms. The other has no map, no compass, and a captain who hopes the wind will carry them somewhere pleasant. Which ship do you think reaches its intended port? Which ship do you think becomes a story of triumph, and which becomes a cautionary tale whispered in taverns? You have been the second ship, but you were never meant to drift. I once knew a man who spent 15 years moving from job to job, city to city, relationship to relationship, always searching for something he could never name. He thought life was happening to him, that his circumstances were the result of bad luck or other people's choices. Then one day, sitting in yet another temporary apartment in yet another unfamiliar city, he looked around and realized the truth. He was not a victim of his circumstances, he was the author of them. Every decision he had avoided making, every choice he had delegated to others, every moment he had waited for clarity instead of creating it, had led him to this place of perpetual wandering. That was his turning point. Not when life finally gave him what he wanted, but when he stopped waiting for life to give him anything at all. The feeling of being lost is not your punishment, it is your wake-up call. It is your mind's way of telling you that you have been operating without a definite purpose, and it is time to reclaim your power to choose your direction. Here is what you must understand. Your current state is not permanent unless you choose to make it so. The same mental laws that have allowed you to drift can be redirected to pull you toward whatever destination you define. But first, you must stop pretending that you are powerless. You must stop waiting for someone else to tell you who you are supposed to become. The moment you accept full responsibility for where you are, you gain the power to determine where you go next. This is not about blame or shame. This is about recognizing that the same mind that created your current circumstances can create entirely different ones. The same choices that led you into the wilderness can lead you out of it. You are not lost because the world is confusing. You are lost because you have not yet decided where you want to go. Number 2, the power of self-honesty. There is a conversation you have been avoiding your entire life. It is the conversation between who you really are and who you pretend to be. It happens in silence, in the space between your public face and your private truth. And until you have this conversation, honestly and completely, you will remain a stranger to yourself. Most people live in elaborate disguises, even when they are alone. They tell themselves stories about why they haven't achieved what they wanted, why they settled for less than they deserved, why they keep making the same mistakes over and over again. These stories are not lies exactly. They are protective barriers built around painful truths that feel too dangerous to examine directly. But transformation begins in the moment you remove these barriers. It begins when you sit down with a piece of paper and write down everything. Everything you have become, everything you fear, everything you regret, everything you hide from the people who think they know you, everything you are ashamed of, proud of, confused about, and angry about. This is not an exercise in self-punishment. This is an exercise in liberation. The truth, when faced directly, loses its power to control you from the shadows. The secrets you keep from yourself are the chains that bind you to patterns you cannot break. The fears you refuse to name are the invisible walls that keep you trapped in a life smaller than your potential. Think of this as an emotional surgery performed on yourself, by yourself. You are both the patient and the surgeon, cutting away the infected thoughts and beliefs that have been poisoning your progress. It will be uncomfortable. It may even be painful. But unlike the slow, chronic pain of living with unexamined truth, this pain has a purpose and an endpoint. I remember a woman who came to understand this principle after years of wondering why her life felt so heavy, so filled with effort that produced no real results. She was successful by most standards, well regarded by her peers, financially stable, but she felt like she was carrying invisible weight everywhere she went. When she finally sat down to have this conversation with herself, she discovered that she had been living according to other people's definitions of success while completely ignoring her own. She had built a life that looked impressive from the outside but felt hollow from within. The weight she carried was the burden of pretending to be someone she was not. The moment she wrote down this truth, something shifted. Not because the situation changed, but because she stopped using her energy to maintain the illusion. She stopped pretending that external validation could fill the void created by internal dishonesty. Here is what happens when you face yourself completely. The energy you have been using to maintain false narratives becomes available for building authentic ones. The mental space occupied by fears and secrets becomes space for vision and possibility. The emotional bandwidth consumed by self-deception becomes bandwidth for self-creation. But you must be ruthless in this process. You cannot edit your truth to make it more palatable. You cannot negotiate with reality to make it more convenient. You must write down what is actually true, not what you wish were true or what you think should be true. Write about the ways you have betrayed yourself. Write about the dreams you abandoned not because they were impossible, but because they required courage you were not ready to summon. Write about the excuses you have used so often that they feel like facts. Write about the people you have blamed for outcomes that were ultimately your responsibility. This is not about becoming cruel to yourself. This is about becoming honest with yourself. And honest is not the same as harsh. Honest is simply accurate. Honest is seeing what is there without the filters of wishful thinking or protective rationalization. When you finish this process, you will know something you have never known before. You will know exactly where you really are, not where you hoped you were or where you told others you were. And only when you know where you really are can you plot an accurate course to where you want to go. The person who emerges from this conversation will be different from the person who entered it. Not because your circumstances have changed, but because your relationship with truth has changed. And that changes everything. Number 3, defining a definite chief aim. Your life has been waiting for you to make a decision. Not just any decision, but the decision. The one that will serve as the organizing principle around which everything else arranges itself. The one that will transform you from a person who wants many things into a person who is becoming something specific. This is what I call your definite chief aim. It is not a wish or a hope or a someday dream. It is a specific, emotionally charged, time-bound declaration of what you intend to become or achieve. It is the difference between wandering through a vast library hoping to stumble upon something interesting and walking directly to the exact book you came to find. Most people live their entire lives without ever defining such an aim. They have preferences and inclinations and general desires, but nothing precise enough to demand their complete attention or compelling enough to reorganize their daily choices. They are like photographers trying to capture a beautiful image without ever focusing the lens. The result is always blurry, always almost, but never quite. But when you define a definite chief aim, something extraordinary happens. Your mind begins to notice opportunities related to that aim that were always there but invisible to you before. Your energy, instead of scattering in multiple directions, begins to concentrate like sunlight through a magnifying glass. Your decisions become easier because you now have a filter through which to evaluate every choice. Here is the crucial understanding. Your definite chief aim must come from your inner desire, not from what others expect of you or what society has taught you to want. It must be something that stirs emotion when you think about it, something that makes your heart beat faster and your mind race with possibility. Logical reasons are not enough. Emotional conviction is what transforms intention into reality. I knew a young man who spent 2 years trying to convince himself that he wanted to become a lawyer because that was what his family expected. He could articulate all the logical reasons why law was a good career. He could make a compelling case for financial security and social status, but when he spoke about it, his voice carried no fire. His aim was reasonable, but not real. Then one day, he admitted to himself that what he actually wanted was to build houses with his hands, to create spaces where families would make memories. The moment he defined this as his chief aim, everything changed. Not because building houses was more important than practicing law, but because it was authentically his desire rather than someone else's expectation. Your aim does not have to be grandiose to be powerful. It does not have to impress anyone else to transform your life. It simply has to be yours, completely and emotionally yours. It must be specific enough that you will know without question when you have achieved it. It must be time-bound enough to create urgency. And it must be important enough to you that you are willing to reorganize your life around it. Even if you are not certain that your current aim is your ultimate purpose, choose one and pursue it with passion. Action reveals purpose in ways that thinking never can. The momentum you create by moving toward any worthy aim will illuminate paths and possibilities that remain invisible to those who wait for perfect clarity before they begin. Write your definite chief aim as a statement, not as a question or a hope. Begin with the words "I will" rather than "I want" or "I hope to" or "I would like to." Set a specific date by which you intend to achieve it. Describe not just what you will accomplish, but who you will become in the process of accomplishing it. Read this statement every morning when you wake up and every evening before you sleep. Say it aloud with emotion, as if it were already a fact rather than a goal. Visualize yourself as the person who has achieved this aim. Feel the emotions you will feel when it becomes reality. This is not positive thinking or wishful thinking. This is definite thinking. And definite thinking, when combined with definite action, produces definite results. Your mind has been waiting for you to give it a clear target. Your energy has been waiting for you to give it a focal point. Your potential has been waiting for you to give it direction. When you define your definite chief aim, you stop being someone who hopes for a better future and become someone who is actively creating one. Number 4, the role of autosuggestion and repetition. Your subconscious mind does not think. It simply accepts and acts upon whatever you feed it repeatedly with emotion. It cannot distinguish between what is real and what is vividly imagined. It cannot tell the difference between what has happened and what you have convinced yourself will happen. This is not a limitation. This is the most powerful creative force at your disposal. Most people use this force accidentally, feeding their subconscious mind a steady diet of doubt, fear, and limitation. They repeat negative statements about themselves so often that these statements become their identity. They say, "I'm not good with money," or "I'm not creative," or "I'm not the type of person who succeeds at that," until these casual words become unshakable beliefs that shape every decision and limit every possibility. But the same process that creates limitation can create expansion. The same mechanism that builds prisons can build palaces. The key is understanding that your subconscious mind responds not to logic, but to emotional repetition. It responds to what you tell it again and again, with feeling, with conviction, with the kind of emotion that bypasses rational thought and penetrates directly into belief. This is the principle of autosuggestion. It is the deliberate practice of programming your subconscious mind through repeated statements charged with emotion. When you combine spoken words with vivid visualization and genuine feeling, you create a formula that transforms possibility into reality. Charles Schwab understood this principle when he programmed his mind for financial success by repeatedly declaring his intentions with such conviction that his subconscious accepted them as fact. Thomas Edison used autosuggestion to maintain his identity as an inventor through thousands of failed experiments, never allowing temporary setbacks to alter his fundamental belief about who he was and what he could achieve. These men did not succeed despite their circumstances. They succeeded because they had trained their minds to see opportunity where others saw only obstacles. The process is simple but not easy. Every morning you must speak your definite chief aim aloud with emotion, as if it were already achieved. You must see yourself in your mind's eye as the person who has accomplished this goal. You must feel the emotions you will feel when this aim becomes reality. And you must do this not once or twice, but every single day, with the same intensity you would use to call for help in an emergency. Think of your subconscious mind as fertile soil that will grow whatever seeds you plant in it. If you plant seeds of doubt and limitation, you will harvest a life of restriction and unfulfilled potential. If you plant seeds of possibility and achievement, you will harvest opportunities and capabilities that seem to appear from nowhere, but actually arise from the depths of your own programmed mind. Most people sabotage this process by mixing positive declarations with negative contradictions. They say, "I am successful in the morning," and "I never get the breaks other people get in the afternoon." They affirm their goals while simultaneously expressing doubt about their ability to achieve them. This is like planting flowers and weeds in the same garden and expecting only flowers to grow. You must become vigilant about the thoughts you allow to dominate your mind. You must recognize that every statement you make about yourself, whether spoken aloud or whispered in your thoughts, is a form of autosuggestion. Your casual self-talk is programming your subconscious just as surely as your deliberate affirmations are. Replace the phrase, "I am the type of person who," with statements that align with your chief aim. Instead of saying, "I am someone who struggles with discipline," say, "I am the type of person who follows through on commitments to myself." Instead of saying, "I am not good at this," say, "I am becoming better at this every day." These are not lies. These are instructions to your subconscious mind about the identity you are choosing to install. The transformation happens gradually, then suddenly. For days or weeks, you may feel like you are simply repeating words that your rational mind questions. But beneath the surface, your subconscious is accepting these repeated impressions as truth and beginning to reorganize your thoughts, your habits, and your perception of what is possible. When your subconscious finally accepts your new self-concept as fact, your external world will begin to rearrange itself to match your internal programming. Opportunities will appear, ideas will emerge. People and circumstances will align with your declared aim in ways that seem almost magical but are actually the natural result of mental laws operating with precision. Your words have been shaping your reality whether you realized it or not. Now you can choose what reality you create. Number 5, the 14-day discipline. 14 days, not 14 months or 14 weeks. 14 consecutive days of absolute commitment to a simple but transformative process. This is not a test of your willpower. This is the installation of a new operating system in your mind, and like any installation, it requires your complete attention and participation from beginning to end. Every single day for the next 14 days, you will follow a 4-part formula without exception, without negotiation, without allowing circumstances to convince you that today is different or that you can make up for it tomorrow. The formula is this: speak your definite chief aim aloud, visualize its fulfillment in vivid detail, take at least one concrete action toward its achievement, and reflect on your progress at the end of each day. This may sound simple, but simple is not the same as easy. The power lies not in the complexity of the actions, but in the consistency of their execution. Each day builds upon the previous day, creating momentum that becomes unstoppable if maintained, but that fractures completely if broken even once. Your mind is testing you. It will offer you seemingly reasonable excuses to skip a day or modify the process. It will tell you that one missed day doesn't matter, that you can double up tomorrow, that the formula is too rigid for your complicated life. These are not rational thoughts. These are the protests of old patterns fighting to survive. They are the death throes of the identity you are choosing to leave behind. When you speak your chief aim aloud each morning, you are not simply stating a goal. You are declaring war on every belief and habit that contradicts this aim. When you visualize its achievement, you are not engaging in fantasy. You are programming your subconscious to recognize and create the conditions necessary for this aim to manifest. When you take action, however small, you are proving to yourself that you are serious about this transformation. When you reflect each evening, you are reinforcing the new identity you are building. I want you to obtain a notebook that will be dedicated exclusively to this process. This notebook will become the record of your transformation, the physical evidence that change is not only possible but happening. In this notebook, you will write your chief aim at the top of each page. Below it, you will record the specific action you took that day, no matter how small. You will note any insights, opportunities, or changes in your thinking. You will document the small victories that your old self would have dismissed as coincidence, but that your emerging self recognizes as proof. The rhythm must be unbroken. If you miss even one day, you must begin again from day one. This is not a punishment. This is a recognition of how momentum actually works. A train that stops must use enormous energy to begin moving again. A train that maintains its momentum can travel vast distances with relatively little additional effort. Your mind operates according to the same principle. By day 3, you will notice that your brain begins to automatically look for opportunities related to your aim. By day 7, you will find yourself making decisions that align with your goal without conscious effort. By day 10, other people will begin to notice something different about your energy and focus. By day 14, you will have installed a new pattern of thinking that will continue to operate even after the formal process ends. But here is what you must understand about these 14 days. They are not the destination, they are the foundation. They are the launching pad from which your new life begins. The habits you build during this time, the identity you install through this process, the momentum you create through consistent action, these become the platform from which everything else becomes possible. Some people will tell you that 14 days is not long enough to create lasting change. They are wrong. 14 days of absolute consistency is more powerful than 14 months of sporadic effort. 14 days of total commitment creates more transformation than 14 years of half-hearted attempts. The question is not whether this process will work. The question is whether you will work the process. Will you choose 14 days of discipline over a lifetime of regret? Will you invest 2 weeks in becoming the person you were meant to be, or will you spend years wondering what might have been possible if you had just committed completely to something, anything for once in your life? Your transformation is not a future event waiting to happen. It begins the moment you commit to these 14 days. It accelerates with each day you honor that commitment. And it becomes permanent when you prove to yourself that you are capable of following through on promises you make to yourself. 14 days stands between the person you are and the person you are becoming. What happens in that space is entirely up to you. Number 6, controlling attention and identity creation. Your attention is the most valuable resource you possess, and it is under constant assault. Every notification, every conversation, every headline, every worry, every regret is competing for the mental space that should be reserved for your definite chief aim. The person who learns to control their attention becomes the master of their destiny. The person who allows their attention to be controlled by external forces becomes a slave to circumstances. Controlled attention means the ability to return your mind again and again to your chosen objective, no matter what distractions arise. It means that when your phone buzzes, when someone starts complaining, when doubt whispers in your ear, when fear tries to redirect your focus, you recognize these interruptions and deliberately guide your attention back to what matters most. This is not about eliminating distractions. This is about training your mind to choose its focus consciously rather than allowing that focus to be chosen for you by whatever demands the most immediate response. Think of your attention as a spotlight in a dark theater. Whatever you shine that light upon becomes visible and real and important. Everything else fades into the background. Most people use their attention like a flashlight with a dying battery, scattered and weak, illuminating nothing completely. They think about their goals for a few minutes in the morning, then spend the rest of the day focused on problems, complaints, entertainment, and other people's agendas. They wonder why their goals seem to make no progress, not realizing that goals only grow under the sustained light of attention. Your subconscious mind is always listening to where you place your attention. It absorbs whatever you focus on repeatedly and begins to treat that focus as a command. If you consistently focus on problems, your subconscious will become expert at finding more problems. If you consistently focus on limitations, your subconscious will become skilled at creating evidence of those limitations. But if you consistently focus on your definite chief aim, your subconscious will begin to organize your thoughts, your habits, and your perception of opportunities around the achievement of that aim. This is how identity is created. Not through dramatic moments of inspiration, but through countless moments of chosen attention. Every time you redirect your focus back to your aim, you are installing a new neural pathway. Every time you choose to think about who you are becoming rather than who you have been, you are literally rewiring your brain. Begin to notice the quality of your inner conversation. Notice how much time you spend rehearsing past failures versus visualizing future success. Notice how often you tell yourself what you cannot do versus affirming what you are learning to do. Notice the difference between saying, "I am someone who struggles with this," and saying, "I am someone who is getting better at this every day." Replace every negative identity statement with a positive one that aligns with your chief aim. Instead of, "I am not a morning person," say, "I am becoming someone who uses mornings productively." Instead of, "I am bad with money," say, "I am developing excellent financial habits." Instead of, "I always give up when things get hard," say, "I am building the strength to persist through challenges." These are not affirmations designed to make you feel better. These are commands to your subconscious mind about the type of person you are choosing to become. When repeated with emotion and backed up with consistent action, these statements become the blueprint from which your new identity is constructed. The modern world has trained you to believe that you have no control over your attention. You have been conditioned to respond immediately to every stimulus, to jump from thought to thought like a pinball bouncing between bumpers. But this conditioning can be reversed. You can train your attention like you would train a muscle, making it stronger and more reliable through consistent exercise. Throughout your day, practice returning your attention to your chief aim. When you find your mind wandering into worry, redirect it toward visualizing success. When you catch yourself thinking thoughts that contradict your goals, consciously replace those thoughts with ones that support your aims. When you notice your attention being pulled toward drama or negativity, deliberately guide it back to possibility and growth. This is not about positive thinking. This is about intentional thinking. This is about recognizing that your attention shapes your reality and choosing to direct that attention toward the reality you want to create rather than the one you want to escape. The person who masters their attention becomes capable of sustained focus on any worthy objective. The person who allows their attention to be scattered by every distraction remains forever at the mercy of circumstances they did not choose and cannot control. Your identity is not fixed. It is created new each day through the accumulation of your focused attention. What you consistently think about, you become. What you repeatedly visualize, you move toward. What you choose to focus on, you empower to shape your life. Choose your focus as carefully as you would choose your direction while driving. Both will determine where you end up. Number 7, persistence as the cement of transformation. Persistence is the element that transforms every other principle from theory into reality. Without persistence, decision becomes wishful thinking. Without persistence, belief becomes temporary enthusiasm. Without persistence, action becomes sporadic effort that produces sporadic results. But when persistence binds these elements together, they become an unstoppable force for transformation. Most people misunderstand what persistence actually means. They think it means continuing to do the same thing over and over regardless of results. But true persistence is the intelligent application of sustained effort toward a definite objective, making adjustments in method while never wavering in purpose. It is the difference between beating your head against a wall and finding another way through. Persistence makes you immune to the temporary defeats that stop most people in their tracks. It makes you resilient to the delays that cause others to abandon their goals. It transforms you into someone who sees obstacles as problems to be solved rather than reasons to quit. Most importantly, persistence changes your relationship with failure from something that defines you to something that refines you. Consider the story of a man who failed in business at 21, was defeated for the legislature at 22, failed again in business at 24, overcame the death of his sweetheart at 26, had a nervous breakdown at 27, lost congressional races at 34 and 36, lost a senatorial race at 45, failed in his effort to become vice president at 47, lost another senatorial race at 49, and was elected president of the United States at 52. That man was Abraham Lincoln. What made him different was not the absence of failure, but his persistence through failure. Or think about the story of Darby, who quit digging for gold just 3 feet from one of the richest veins ever discovered in Colorado. He had invested everything, worked for months, drilled through rock and hardship, only to sell his equipment to a junk dealer and walk away in defeat. That junk dealer hired an engineer who determined that the vein was just 3 feet from where Darby had stopped digging. 3 feet. The difference between fortune and failure, between success and surrender, was 3 feet of persistence. How many people are 3 feet from their breakthrough right now? How many have given up just before the moment when everything was about to change? How many have mistaken temporary defeat for permanent failure and walked away from goals that were closer to reality than they could imagine? This is why persistence is not just helpful, but essential. It is the quality that allows you to continue when logic suggests you should quit. It is the force that keeps you moving when emotions argue for retreat. It is the element that ensures you are still working toward your aim when opportunity finally appears. But persistence must be built deliberately. It does not arise automatically from desire or hope. It develops through the daily practice of keeping commitments to yourself, especially the small ones that no one else notices. Every time you do what you said you would do, even when you don't feel like doing it, you build persistence. Every time you honor a promise to yourself, you strengthen your ability to honor bigger promises under more difficult circumstances. Your identity is not something you discover through meditation or receive through inspiration. Your identity is something you install through the persistent repetition of thoughts, declarations, and actions that align with who you choose to become. You become persistent by persistently acting like a persistent person. You become disciplined by persistently choosing discipline over convenience. You become successful by persistently doing what successful people do, especially when you don't feel like doing it. This process cannot be rushed, but it can be accelerated through the intensity of your commitment. A person who makes half-hearted efforts for years will achieve less than a person who makes total commitment for months. A person who gives sporadic attention to their goals will be surpassed by a person who gives consistent attention to the same goals. Persistence is not about grinding yourself down through mindless repetition. Persistence is about maintaining forward movement toward your definite chief aim, regardless of temporary setbacks, unexpected delays, or moments of doubt. It is about becoming the type of person who finishes what they start, who follows through on commitments, who continues when others quit. When you develop real persistence, you stop fearing failure because you understand that failure is simply information about what doesn't work. You stop fearing delay because you know that timing is often beyond your control, but persistence is always within your control. You stop fearing competition because you realize that most people lack the persistence to see anything through to completion. The world belongs to those who persist, not because they are more talented or more fortunate, but because they are still working when others have given up. They are still believing when others have lost faith. They are still moving forward when others have turned back. Your definite chief aim, combined with controlled attention and emotional repetition, will take you far, but it is persistence that will take you all the way. It is persistence that transforms temporary effort into permanent results. It is persistence that cements all other elements into a foundation that cannot be shaken by temporary circumstances. The question is not whether you will face obstacles or experience delays or encounter temporary defeats. The question is whether you will persist through them. That choice, made again and again, will determine not just what you achieve, but who you become in the process of achieving it. Something profound happens when you realize that these 14 days are not a destination but a doorway. Each morning you choose these practices, you become someone who no longer needs to be rescued from their own life. You become someone who creates meaning instead of searching for it. The person who walks mindfully today is different from the person who rushed through yesterday without noticing. The person who writes honestly tonight is not the same person who kept those thoughts locked away last week. Transformation whispers through small moments of choice, through quiet acts of self-care, through the gradual recognition that you are no longer who you were. There will come a morning when you realize that feeling lost has been replaced by something else. Not certainty, but curiosity. Not answers, but better questions. Not a destination, but a direction that feels unmistakably yours. This is the moment you discover you have been on the right path all along. Think of a river flowing underground for miles, invisible and unknown, until suddenly it breaks through the surface. Your purpose, your clarity, your sense of belonging has always been there, flowing beneath the surface. These practices are simply clearing away the debris that has hidden the stream. If this journey feels like home to you, if these words feel like a conversation you have been waiting to have, then stay with us. Subscribe to continue walking this path with others who understand that real transformation happens one conscious choice at a time. You are not lost. You never were. You were simply learning to recognize the sound of your own inner voice, calling you home to yourself.